All right, hello everyone. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I want to welcome you back to another edition of your Adrenal Fix. Today we're going to be talking about why isn't my brain working? So if you're dealing with a stress problem, you're overwhelmed, you're exhausted, you're burnt out, you're not handling the stressors the same way that you used to, chances are you're dealing with a brain problem. So not being focused, not being able to concentrate, not remembering the words that you were going to say in the middle of a sentence, walking into a room and forgetting what you were going to get or what you were going to do, coming out of a mall and not remembering where your car is. All of these things are signs of brain decline. Not only that, but what about irritability and just shortness of a fuse, or being very, very anxious, or being overwhelmed with things that didn't stress you in the past, or being sad or melancholy, or being up and down and being manic and then being depressive. All of these things show signs of brain decline. And that's what I want to talk to you guys today about, because there is a relationship to stress. Obviously, the more stress that you have, there's a higher correlation of focus and concentration and anxiety. So let's talk about the role that stress plays on brain decline. And really what I wanted to do is I wanted to talk to you about the book that we're using for this. It's called Why Isn't My Brain Working? It's by Dr. Karazian. It's been around for quite some time now. It's a pretty thick book. I remember the first time I got this, I was on Audible, and I just couldn't believe how long the book was until I finally bought the book myself. I was like, no wonder it was so long and so thick. You can go out and get the book. Again, it's called Why Isn't My Brain Working? But that's why we do these Facebook Lives, so that I can distill the information down to you, and you guys can get all the good information from it. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to talk about the 5 areas that we want to look at that has to do with the stress response. Obviously, number 1 is stress. How does stress impact the brain? Number 2, the supply of fuel to the brain is both dependent on glucose delivery and oxygenation. And if that's not happening optimally, that's going to be a very stressful thing. And if obviously you're not getting enough glucose to your cells and you're not getting enough oxygen delivery to your cells, that too is going to be a very stressful thing. Also, there's a brain-gut axis. So we have sort of that second brain in the gut. When the gut barrier breaks down, it's very highly correlated to the brain barrier breaking down, and that creates a whole bunch of inflammation. And typically that's going to create neuroinflammation. When we have neuroinflammation, we're going to have brain decline. And then lastly, we're going to talk about neurotransmitters, the excitatory neurotransmitters and the inhibitory neurotransmitters, so that we can get some really good insight today. So the first thing that I want you to do is, whenever I'm working with people, is we look and we do these brain health assessment forms. And actually, I'm really excited because my website's going to be done pretty soon here, and I am going to be having these forms on my website too, so that you can take a survey, and then we'll give you results of that survey and what that means. But basically, here's the questions that we ask when we're talking about stress and the impact on the brain. And I want you to answer. You could type in 0, 1, 2, or 3 so we can make this interactive. But I want to know how stress impacts your brain. 0 would be none of the time. 1 would be some of the time, 2 would be most of the time, and 3 would be all of the time. So I always have projects and things that need to be done. 0, 1, 2, or 3. You never have time for yourself. 0, 1, 2, or 3. You never get enough sleep or rest. 0, 1, 2, or 3. Difficulty getting regular exercise. 0, 1, 2, or 3. Feeling that you are not accomplishing your life's purposes. 0, 1, 2, or 3. So these are subjective questions, but if you answered 1, 2, or 3, or mostly 3 for all of those, then we know that that stress is impacting the brain. The other thing we look at is in terms of glucose and the brain. So for glucose, do you have things like irritable, nervous, or lightheaded between meals, difficulty when you eat large meals, or energy drops in the afternoon? afternoon, or you crave sugars or sweets in the afternoon, you wake up in the middle of the night, you have difficulty concentrating before you eat, you depend on coffee to get you going, you fatigue after meals, you have sweet or sugar cravings after meals, you need stimulant like coffee or something like that after a meal, you have difficulty losing weight, you have difficulty falling asleep, you have increased appetite. If you answered 1, 2, or 3 to those, then we know that would be a glucose concern that's impacting your brain. The other thing we would be looking at is endurance or oxygenation to the brain. So you get focus and concentration after some time, you really feel tired. You have cold hands or feet. You must exercise or drink coffee to improve your brain function. You have poor nail health. You have fungal growth on the toenails. You got to wear shoes or socks to keep your feet warm. The nail beds are white instead of pink, and the tip of your nose is cold. If you answered any of those questions of 1, 2, or 3, then we know that optimally your brain is not getting enough glucose and oxygen. The next thing we look at is the brain and the gut health. So things like difficulty with digesting your foods, constipation or inconsistent bowel movements, increased bloating or gas, abdominal distension after meals, difficulty to digest protein-rich foods or starch-rich foods, or even difficulty digesting fatty foods or greasy foods, difficulty when you swallow large bites of foods, and you have abnormal gag reflex, so you're not really getting that good swallowing going. The chances are there's a brain-gut concern. With neuroinflammation, I really want to talk to you about neuroinflammation. I want you to think of neuroinflammation as the inability to put out free radical damage. That's really what's going on. So if you can think about, why don't we think about the role of infections? A lot of the time what happens is we have unresolved infections, from viruses to pathogenic parasites to bacterias to molds to candidas to yeast to biofilms. A lot of that is going on, but here's the thing. If you have a methylation problem, you have an MTHFR problem, or you're not getting your good leafy greens, or you're not getting good quality proteins, then what's happening is you are not methylating. And that problem is it goes so much further than not methylating and not being able to quote unquote detox. But what will happen is when you're not methylating, you're not turning off the expression. And so what happens is your gene card, when it comes time to shuffle the deck and lay new tissue, you can express a rotavirus or a retrovirus. And the problem with that is now you have unresolved inflammation secondary to an expression of a virus secondary to not methylating. And now all of a sudden you have neuroinflammation. That's a big one. And then lastly, I wanted to talk about neurotransmitters. So neurotransmitters are going to be things like, let's talk about them. So here is when we have serotonin concerns, a loss of pleasure in your hobbies, feeling overwhelmed with ideas to manage, feeling inner rage or unprovoked anger, feelings of paranoia, feelings of sadness for no reason, a loss of enjoyment, a lack of artistic appreciation, feeling sadness when it's wet, when the weather's stinky outside, a loss of enthusiasm for your favorite things or your favorite foods or your friendships, inability to get deep, good quality sleep, feeling dependency on others, and feeling susceptibility to pain. Those are things that are going to really suggest there's a serotonin concern. As far as a dopamine concern, feeling of worthlessness, feeling of hopelessness, self-destructive thoughts, inability to handle stress, anger and aggression when you're under stress. You're tired even though you've slept so long. You desire to isolate yourself. You have unexplained lack of concern for your friends or your family, an inability to finish the tasks, and feeling of anger for minor reasons. That, again, is going to be a neurotransmitter concern. So these are the things that I wanted to talk to you about today. So what I'm going to do, first of all, is I'm actually going to go at a sequence. I'm going to see if I can answer some of your questions. So let's take a look. See, Timur, hope you're doing well. What about the blood-brain barrier? Sorry. and doing keto for the brain? Okay, so those are great questions. So there are tests that are out there nowadays that test the brain barrier. They're antibodies to some of the permeable membranes or the linings of the blood-brain barrier, and that's a really great thing to do. The other thing that I've recommended to a lot of people, and you may have heard it before, it's called the GABA challenge. The GABA challenge is you take GABA, 1,000 milligrams, probably would do it at about, after work, maybe 7, 8 o'clock in the evening. And you can have 3 responses to that. You can have, number 1, no response. Number 2, you can get really tired and feel inhibited. Or number 3, you can get anxious. So if you get no response whatsoever, that is called a negative test. That's what you want. The GABA molecule is so small that you shouldn't have any of that goes unbroken into the brain barrier. And if you have a sedative effect, then you know that it's passed through that permeable, broken down barrier membrane, and you can assume that you have a leaky brain, is what we call it. Or if you get excited, then that too explains that there is a permeable membrane there, but it's creating a paradoxical upregulation of your excitatory mechanisms. We see a lot of methylation problems in that area. We see some problems with glutamic acid decarboxylase and GABA pathways. But here's the thing. If you have any response, whether it's feeling more sedated or feeling more stressed, you have a blood-brain barrier breakdown. That's probably the best way to do that. A lot of people will say, well, that sucks. I was taking GABA before, and now I realize that it was sedative, but ultimately it wasn't fixing things. It isn't. It's just pointing out to you that you have a broken barrier membrane there. And so what we typically recommend is looking at, again, what's driving it: stress, glucose, oxygen, neuroinflammation, viruses, neurotransmitter imbalances, stuff like that. And the things that we look at to help that would be things like glutathione, vitamin D, vitamin A, looking at reducing the sources of the inflammation. All of those types of things will really work. And then, of course, isoflavonoids. There's some really, really great ones out there, like what are the ones? Vinpocetine and huperzine A. Those are a really, really good supporting isoflavonoids that can really dampen that neuroinflammation. Great question. And doing keto for the brain. So why could keto be helpful? So ultimately, when you have a glucose dysregulation issue, when you have hypoglycemic tendencies and or reactive hypoglycemic and or metabolic insulin resistant type tendencies, what happens is you are upregulating the dependent glut receptors to bring in the glucose into the cell. After a while, those glut receptors, they don't work so well. And as a result, you have this insulin resistance phenomena where you're not getting glucose into the cell. That's when we feel really tired after a meal. And then you're producing more cholesterol and triglycerides. When you go keto, provided that a lot of things are assumed to be equal, meaning you're doing it properly and you're a good indication patient to do it, then you are going to save those glut receptors, and you are going to bypass the requirement of being shuttled into the mitochondria through that, and you're going to be able to do that through, provided you have enough L-carnitine and some CoQ10. So that can be really, really helpful, but easier said than done, TMR, and but good questions. So Susan Travis, hello, and hi, Sarah, hope you're doing well. Amazing as always, thank you so much. I did that and had 0 response. Okay, so good. So it means that you don't have a broken down permeable membrane, which is good. But I would also want to look at your glutathione stores. I would want to look at your vitamin A, your vitamin D, your mucosal lining, that way of your GI tract, your secretory IgA, and the role that plays with your stress. And I would want to know, are there potentially other things? Like, what's the main problem, TMR? Are you dealing with brain fog? Are you dealing with focus, concentration? Are you dealing with anxiety, mood disorders? Are you dealing with inability to sleep? I mean, you got to ask those questions too. That's what's really important, is when a doctor asks you questions, they want to pay attention to the answers so that they can correlate the questions they're asking with the objective findings and the whole algorithm. So Leslie, I hope you're well. How can you lower or process dopamine if you have a slow comp or inability to process tyrosine? So just think about it like this. When you have a comp T, when you have a homozygous, it doesn't mean it's not working. That's the bottom line. It doesn't mean it's not working. What it means, it's not working at full capacities. It's not reading it properly, and sometimes the bases get shifted. And so when you have increased demand to make dopamine under stressful situations, or you have increased demand to break down hormones or whatever the environment in your body is, those compound heterozygous or homozygous SNPs are going to work at lower capacity. So it doesn't mean it's not working, right? It doesn't mean that. But how would you process it? Number one is you would start with the basics, lower the stress response to even have to produce it. I mean, obviously easier said than done. Getting good oxygen. ATP is requiring oxygen, plain and simple. Getting good quality minerals. Minerals are going to be the cofactors for all of this. If you don't have a healthy mitochondria, you can't use iron to help make CoQ10. And so iron is that sort of that very necessary ingredient that you can have a huge problem with, potentially because of liver issues, absorption issues, even parasitic and pathogenic issues, poaching your iron and having a lot of oxidized iron and a lot. So that's a Pandora's box we could set up for a whole other time, Leslie. But also making sure that you're getting good quality folinic acid or leafy greens or nucleotide bases, good amino acids, so that you can make your dopamine. And then the COMT is not the only enzyme that is going to help clear out the dopamine as well. And really, when you get into micromanaging your SNPs and you get into sort of the bigger picture of controlling your environment, getting good oxygen, getting good aminos, getting good folates, having good gut healthy flora, then you're doing, and then supporting the stress response so that you're not having to process so much, then you're going to have that comp work better. And the other enzymes, the other exit routes that you go through that doesn't go through COMT are going to be working better, and your antioxidant system is going to take the slack for all the free radicals that you're producing. I hope that answered your question, Leslie. Hi, Brenda. Hope you're doing well. Susan Travis, what do you think about the UVB, I think that's what you're saying, therapy? I've got high Epstein-Barr titers, hoping to take the level down to give my body a break. My neurotransmitters are about half normal. So I don't really know, to be honest with you. I know I have a friend who did a lot of ultraviolet therapy, if that's what you're saying, and it can be very therapeutic. I like a couple ways of going about doing that. I like obviously looking at the genetic susceptibilities. I like getting the basics in terms of trying to get your pH up and getting good minerals so that you have more oxygenation to your cells. I like having good mitochondrial support through CoQ10 and alpha lopaic acid, or actually DHLA, which is an R-alpha lopaic acid. And I know a lot of people in the Andy Cutler world and in the detoxification world are saying, oh, you can't do that because it's going to pull that. I gotta disagree with you and realize that reduced lipoic acid is probably the best antioxidant that you can have in the body that's going to quench all of your superoxide radicals and your hydroxyl radicals and your peroxynitrate radicals. It's going to help a lot. And so looking at that first, getting your pH higher, and then starting to get fancy, whether it be through homeopathic remedies or other types of ways and tools that botanicals that doctors use, but certainly UV could be therapeutic for sure. Timur, I have a problem with mold that creates constant inflammation. Moved to a new house and felt better for 2 to 3 months. Then I moved some stuff from the old house to the new one and started having problems again. How can I stop the mold allergy or reduce the chronic inflammatory response? Stop going to the old house, number one. I guess you had to, but you're as much as you reduce the exposures, you continually have to detox those. Binders, all this stuff, binders and glutathione, and then also looking at supporting liver, supporting methylation, supporting B vitamin status, supporting energy production. All this stuff. You're just asking me a question you know the answers to. Yup, ultraviolet. Okay, good. I don't know about blood I don't even know what you're spelling there. Irritation or irritation? Sorry. Hi, Joel. Great topic. I had my neurotransmitters tested and they were all out of balance. I have added GABA, L-theanine, extra vitamin C, selenium D3, magnesium, digestive enzymes, and quercetin and bromelain along with my other supplements, and I found decreased brain fog, anxiety, overwhelm, and sleeping better. Awesome. So here's a clinical pearl that I want you to understand. A lot of people have this problem. When you have something like that, Susan, where you're feeling better, then I want you to stop the supplements. And you're like, well, what do you mean these supplements have been helping me? Well, I want you to stop the supplements for as long as you're riding that wave. So think about it as you're out there surfing, you're trying to catch some cool waves, and then you catch one, and then you're riding it in. And you ride it in until you can't go anymore. That's what we're talking about with supplementation. A lot of people will ride a wave, and forget that they're surfing. And same thing, you'll forget that you're taking supplements to feel better. And understanding your pathways, and understanding why, and understanding how, and understanding the what's. When you understand that, and you are a better listener to your body, and you're riding a wave and you're feeling pretty good, that supplement is meant to be a stopgap. It's meant to be a supplement that you can give yourself support while you're getting your body, re-upped for producing energy at higher levels. You're trying to, plant crops, and you're trying to reap what you sow, and that has to do with your supplements and your body. You're just not always watering the grass. At some point, you have to let the sunlight and the air and the time to let it come up. So that's a really important distinction. I hope all of you guys listen to. And that's really kind of all I had today. I really wanted to talk to you about, obviously, the stress response and the role that plays on the brain fog, glucose and oxygen. We can have a whole seminar on that. The brain-gut axis, many people don't look at that. It's a major thing. It's not just about cutting out grains and cutting out dairy, but it has a lot to do with getting diversity in your gut, getting good prebiotics. I'm a huge fan of natural fermented raw-based foods. Those are really, really important, getting good minerals, not cooking the snot out of your food at high temperatures and depleting all of your reserves for digesting foods and breaking down proteins and absorbing fats and carbs. Looking at the neuroinflammation secondary to not methylating that causes viruses to get expressed and then causing nutritional deficiencies and even further cycling of your neuroinflammatory response, driving your neurotoxins in terms of your inflammation and your transmitters, bombarding the cell, being an overwhelm, being anxious, can't focus, can't concentrate, having brain fog, and you have this vicious cycle. Hopefully that made sense. So anyways, that's all I got for you guys tonight. Hope you guys got a lot out of it. My name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I look forward to ending your brain, I guess we would call it your brain fog nightmare. Now, also for those that are new, we do a lot of one-on-ones with people just to troubleshoot and see where you are with your health. what you've tried, what you haven't tried, what's working, what's not working, but most importantly, get an idea on where you want to go. And what I'll do is I'll tell you everything I think you need to do to get there. And if I don't think I can, if I know what to do and I don't, I'll tell you that too. But you have to be willing to, make the sacrifices and make the changes. We always say to the people that do our programs, and it's not for everyone, is people that are decisive, that know, hey, I got a real bad problem that can't go on any longer. If it continues to go on longer, I don't know how much longer I'm going to go on in general. Number two, they're going to be super coachable. They're going to show up and do the work. And you guys are smart. You just need someone to lead the way. You need that lighthouse to anchor your beam to, so to speak, so you can find the protected ground and safety net and get back to where you need to get to. And then resourceful, at the end of the day, I know you spent a lot of money, and I know that you've also, you haven't been working and it's expensive. But, the people that we work with typically understand that the investment into getting their health back pales, in comparison to how much it could be when you're suffering and you don't have your health. And again, these calls aren't a sales call. This call is about me telling you what I think you're missing. And a lot of the times we tell people and they get a lot of value out of it in terms of looking at the genetic component, looking at the stress and the impact that has, understanding how glucose and oxygen is playing on the body, understanding there's a gut-brain ratio that you're not looking at neuroinflammation and methylation, and looking at neurotransmitters and giving you some insights. So hopefully you guys got a lot of value out of that tonight. Again, my name is Dr. Joel Rosen. I am the Adrenal Fatigue Recovery Ninja, and I look forward to ending your brain fog nightmare. Thank you so much.